morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to Dependency. Right here on I-95.5 FM, live on the Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel. Thank you very much for joining us. Good morning, Natasha.
Good morning, Garth. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning.
And Gary Barrington is here as usual. And of course, Mr. Hinkson is in the operating room. We want to announce a program change this morning. The folks at the EMU, that's the Electronic Monitoring Unit, they are up to their neck in work. And
very busy.
Very, very busy with this. As you know, it's a new unit, and they putting stuff together still this morning where they had some emergencies. And we understand the exigencies of the service. We understand that. So although we knew the other program that we're going to do, we have more time to spend on that this morning, and this is very important, folks, that you heard the news about the 27 Venezuelan women rescued and an operation led by the Counter Trafficking Unit of Trinidad and Tobago with other agencies. Well, we have that documentary to play for you this morning of a young lady who came here. And as one activist said, there are people leaving Trinidad and Tobago, going across to Venezuela to recruit gullible, naive in some instances, unsuspecting young ladies, promising them a better life in Trinidad and Tobago, and only to find out that they end up in a trafficking ring. And she was just 17 at the time, and you will hear her story. You can either see it or listen to it. The fact is, human trafficking is a serious, serious crime in Trinidad and Tobago. And more so, we did not want to advertise so much that we were going to delve into it, because it would have made some people uncomfortable. And you know how things happening in this country here these days, right? It takes nothing to take people out. So we had to be very careful how we broach this topic this morning. Now, this young lady, of course, was smuggled here as part of a huge ring in Trinidad and Tobago. Thankfully for her, our police officers were on the ball, and they were able to rescue her in time, because when she came here the first day was a holiday, so she didn't start to work, and she was carried to work the next day. But our police officers, who were on top of the game, they rescued her in time. She was lucky, but you will hear her story, how she got here, what it entails, how she was coerced to come here. You will get that from Maria this morning. And it's so strange that some young ladies tend to throw caution to the wind. You will hear the preparations that she had to go through without alerting anyone to come to Trinidad. And police, of course, we will be speaking with two operatives, and the director, one operative, Superintendent Veronique, after we play this documentary, and the director of the Counter Trafficking Unit, Ms. Alana. We'll come to you again, Trinidad and Tobago, to let you know how serious this is. And it's not only focused on women from Venezuela or men. It could be happening right here under our nose, and we're still not paying attention.
It's Trinidad and Tobago nationals as well. It happens.
Yes. And as you know, Ms. Wheeler will also explain the tier positions again, if you didn't know. Just to give you a hint, TNT on Tier 2 watch list. Now, this is good, but it's not good for us, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And as I said, United States Department Trafficking in Persons Report 2021 places Trinidad and Tobago on the Tier 2 watch list. It stated that the Trinidad and Tobago government does not fully meet the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking, but it is making significant efforts to do so. It also noted that with respect to prosecution, The report stated that the government decreased prosecution efforts. That's not the government, that's the judiciary. But that's how it's worded in the report. Because of out there putting their lives on the line, countless times there are people who were charged and awaiting trial in our system for years. And we made it to tier 2, but then we were pushed back on the tier 2 watch list, which is a difference, Ms. Wheeler. I will explain that to you all this morning. The problem is that the wheels are turning too slow. The officers are doing their jobs. They are. Olia's day, when everybody was planning to party and what they're doing for Olia's night, CTU officers and other agencies were working. So this is a round-the-clock thing. Traffickers don't take a break. It's a very lucrative trade. And in light of police again, the SIU, seizing 8 million worth of illegal drugs in Trinidad City, 4 Chinese immigrants were arrested. Now, when we saw this report, hear what they found. During a search of the premises, officers allegedly found and seized 201 glass vials, each labeled ketamine, 10%, 23 millimeters for, and this is for veterinary use only. Now it says that on the vial, but you know what it's also used for? It's a date rape drug, along with 76 Ziploc packets, each containing a white crystal-like substance resembling the dangerous drug ketamine. Ketamine. We've told you all what that drug is here.
Also known as Special K.
Right? It's a date rape drug. When you administer that to someone, you could have your way with them for hours. They wake up the next morning, they will never be able to say what happened. Wow. It wipes their memory. Wow. Wow. So folks, and that was found right here by the SIU. And Gary, I'm sorry I didn't tell you to get an applause button, because, and I'm sure this is just the tip of the iceberg. And we want to congratulate the SIU, and we yes. Well done to the SIU.
And getting that drug off the street and yes. out of the hands of potential people who will use it to take advantage of
yes,
others.
Because it's a nasty drug. Ketamine is a medication that doctors use as anesthetic to induce loss of consciousness. Effects include sedation and reduced sensation of pain. However, ketamine is also used as a date rape drug to assist in committing a sexual assault. Sexual assault is in any type of sexual activity that does not the victim does not agree to. And this is what we have circulated now. This is just one location the police found this at. And I'm hoping one day to see, I know it will take a lot of manpower to do this, but a coordinated raid on most of these establishments, because it wouldn't be at one location alone. 8 million worth of this drug, people. So understand what we're working against. The Ministry of National Security had put together a task force again to do studies and try to bring Trinidad and Tobago up to that tier 2. Tier 1 status, folks, is up to the judiciary. They don't like us talking about it, but it's the fact. Tier 1 depends on the judiciary. The officers are doing their jobs. The judiciary now just have to
do this.
Cross the line, take the baton over the line, and get us to tier 1. So folks, this morning, we want you to sit back, listen to this young lady. Don't miss a word, don't even blink. Hear what she had to say. We were fortunate to be invited by the Counter Trafficking Unit to interview her. And this is what, after this break, when we return, Natasha? Mm-hmm. After this break, when we return, we will delve into Maria's story. Here's what she has to say. Here's what's going on in Trinidad and Tobago, right under your very nose. And when we return, we will speak with the experts on this and share more with you. But again, we want to thank all our law enforcement agencies for their continued diligence, commitment, And that will they possess to help Trinidad and Tobago achieve its Tier 1 status. Right? That was for you, our law enforcement officers. Well done, well done, well done. Short man, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, you're going to hear the first part, Act 1, how it all began. We'll be back.
Cappy, talk to you now, boy. Got a small work for you to do. Make a quick 10 G's. What you going to do for me?
10 G's? What's that how I do there, boy?
What you doing? Taking your boat, going up the islands, pick up some people and then bring them back here for me. That's all you have to do.
That sounds like human trafficking, man. That's a serious crime. I can't make that.
Trafficking in human beings is a serious violation of a person's human rights. It violates a person's right to freedom of movement, freedom of choice, freedom of speech, and freedom of identity. It is a heinous crime which affects local, regional, and international peace and security. A victim of human trafficking is subjected to many types of abuse. The crime destroys a person's dignity and self-worth. Victims often feel hopeless, are suicidal, and are stigmatized in their communities. Child victims are deprived of their rights to education, play, and social interactions. They're essentially robbed of their childhood, and that can never be regained once those years have passed. If we do little or nothing to fight against human trafficking in our country, we can face economic sanctions from international agencies and partners. Our country will be losing money. Doing little or nothing to fight against human trafficking will tarnish our country's international image and, most of all, the value we place on human life. Human trafficking is no respecter of persons. Anyone can be a victim. So let us all strive to safeguard human life and dignity in Trinidad and Tobago.
We are the Counter Trafficking Unit of the Ministry of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago, safeguarding human life.
Ion Dependency will be a morning show in 2022.
That's right. On Dependency marks 20 years on the air. We're taking our groundbreaking brand of radio to a whole new audience. From the team that took you inside prisons in the UK.
I was being held and tried for conspiracy to import cocaine into the UK.
We spoke with men and women who have paid for their crimes.
They didn't tell me if I bring him back and I get catch, I'll get 14 years imprisonment. They didn't say that.
We brought you the glamour of feature film.
I do have a package to drop off in Trinidad.
For you, Alejandro, anything.
I will pay you each 5,000 euros.
And the squalor of death row.
It's a common person from a case in the High Court in Port of Spain, and it was in common get and pain from the gate.
And of course, the testimonies of men and women with drug use disorders.
I was quite devastated and got involved with the wrong company.
The man who I used to deal with, he gave me a job to drive him around, just to go and buy cocaine and smoke cocaine.
From Toronto to London, New York to Los Angeles, Scarborough to Point Fortin, and everywhere in between, On Dependency has been your source for drug information. Join us as we move to Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. Don't miss On Dependency. Listen live on I-95.5 FM or watch the live stream on Facebook and YouTube. On Dependency. We don't just share stories. We change lives. We change lives.
Ion Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on I-95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Ion Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
for staying with us. This is Iron Dependency, and this morning we are zeroing in on the topic of human trafficking, and we have a documentary to share with you. It's called The Story of Maria, and see if you can spot the similarities with the story that Garth described earlier, when police busted a human trafficking ring rescuing 27 young Venezuelan women. According to the commissioner, human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar business and high-class bandits are involved. And again, we congratulate the work of police officers attached to the Counter Trafficking Unit, the Immigration Division, Guard and Emergency Branch, and the Interagency Task Force for rescuing these young women from the Felicity area, and these women are suspected of having been trafficked and procured for prostitution. And we want to remind you as well that this crime of human trafficking would not be possible if there were not a demand for women for the sex industry. Real men don't buy women. That is one of the mantras that we have on Iron Dependency. So if men were not willing to pay for sex, there would be no need to groom and coerce women from across borders and within our borders to work in the sex industry in Trinidad and Tobago.
And having said that, there are some people tend to think that every Venezuelan woman they see in Trinidad and Tobago, they came here for that.
Yep.
And that is not so. You see some of them and you wouldn't believe some of them don't even have their passports with them. They don't have anything that they could move left or right with. They are constantly monitored, and some of them actually smuggled here or coerced to come here. And so not all of them, yes, there are those who have their own agenda, but they're not the majority. So we need to stop labeling them. And if our men are chasing after them, don't hate the women, talk to the men. Mm-hmm. Because if the men did not partake, then the demand here would decrease and they would have to do their trade somewhere else. But so don't hate on them. I've heard the comments, and some will say, well, but if you reach home and anyway, let's not waste time with that.
Yes.
But the fact is, and I want to congratulate PC Gerald of the Special Investigations Unit, who laid the charges of this dangerous drug, because a lot of drug use are involved too in the human trafficking scenario.
Yes.
So without further ado, folks, let's go to this documentary. As I said, you can either listen on your radio or tune into Iron Dependency Facebook page or YouTube channel and see Maria as she tells her story of how she happened to come to Trinidad and found herself smack dab in the middle of a sex trafficking ring. Thankfully, she was rescued. So let's go to Act 1, how it all began, for Maria. Hello, welcome to this Iron Dependency special interview. You will hear from a young lady who came here. You will hear of her journey, how she got here, and what happened to her when she landed here. She took a chance, and we are about to have an interview with her. Her name is Maria. Here's what happened to Maria.
My name is Maria. I'm 18 years old. I am from the central part of Venezuela. And today I come to tell you about my experience in Trinidad and Tobago.
Maria, tell us, what was it like growing up in Venezuela?
I grew up in Venezuela and I had a beautiful experience. my parents were always with me. In the 17 years that I've been in Venezuela with them, my family is very humble. They are workers, and I had a beautiful childhood, always surrounded by my family, by love, and my 3 sisters.
Now, Maria, you went to school in Venezuela. Tell us about that. Tell us about your education and what was your journey like with that in Venezuela?
Yes, I went to school. I finished high school, was about to go to university in March of this year, 2020.
Tell us about your family, Maria. Did you come from a poor family, rich family, middle class family? Tell us about that.
Sí, mis padres ambos trabajan.
Yes, both parents work. Both parents are engineers. And my mom at the moment is studying again, primary education.
So you came from a well-off family. You all were happy growing up in Venezuela. You didn't have a care in the world, right?
Sí, se puede decir que sí.
Yes, you can say that. My family has always supported me in anything I wanted to do while I was there. And any obstacle that we would find, we would always try to get over it.
So, Maria, is it safe to say then that where you grew up, the struggles of the everyday Venezuelan national, or even the downturn in the economy, the sanctions, that didn't affect your family at all?
Sí, obviamente.
Yes, obviously, all cities were going through these situations, but even though, above all, we were not in dire necessity, so we didn't have to go through that.
So what made you decide to come to Trinidad then? You risked your life, literally. Why did you decide to come to Trinidad and Tobago?
Because I wanted to get to know new horizons, experiences. I wanted to know more, something more than just my own country.
Now, did you discuss coming to Trinidad with your family? Did you tell anyone at all?
No, I did not mention it to anyone.
Why didn't you?
I knew that if I shared this with a close friend, most probably they would tell my parents, and I knew that my parents will not permit me to leave home in that way.
Did you have a boyfriend at the time in Venezuela?
Yes. Yes, I had.
Did you discuss it with him at all?
I did not tell him about deciding to come here, but on several occasions I did mention that I wanted to leave the country, but I did not tell him that I was coming here.
So, who encouraged you to come to Trinidad, and where did you meet this person?
Una chica que yo consideraba mi amiga.
Through a friend, I met this girl at a disco. This friend was supposed to be my best friend, and at a disco we went out that night. We shared information. We spoke about what each one of us were doing at the time, and a few days after, this friend contacted me via Facebook.
So this friend started off as being a stranger, but then she sent you a friend request on Facebook, and that you all started communicating from there.
Sí, y yo se la acepté.
Yes, and I accepted her Facebook request because we had met that night, we had shared information, and I thought she would become another friend like the other friends I have on Facebook.
So who asked the question about coming to Trinidad? Did you ask her, or did she invite you to come to Trinidad?
No, ella me había escrito.
No, we were chatting on Facebook, but then for about a month, I didn't hear about her. I didn't hear of her. So I wrote her and asked her about what she was doing. And after conversing, then she told me that she was in Trinidad and Tobago and that things here were going well for her, and that I could come to Trinidad and Tobago and she would help me.
So this friend, was she Venezuelan or Trinidadian?
Venezuelan.
So when you got into contact with her again, what was the conversation like, and who made the decision now for you to come to Trinidad?
Cuando yo la contacté,
When I contacted her
estábamos hablando de que
again,
ella estaba acá.
we spoke and she told me that things were going well with her here, that she was living alone here, and days after she offered me if I wanted to come, and that she would help me and support me, and I then decided that I would come.
Did she ask about your family, or did you tell her that your family would not find favor with you coming to Trinidad?
Cuando tocamos ese
I did
tema,
not
yo le dije,
immediately tell her yes that I would go. I told her that I would think about it. I'll give her an answer later, because I was afraid, I was nervous, and I told her that I did not think that my family would accept it. And she told me not to tell my family about it, because then they would not let me go.
So didn't you become suspicious with that answer?
sí,
Yes, I had a little doubt, but I never imagined what would come in the future.
So when did you finally decide to let her know that you're ready to come to Trinidad?
About 2 weeks later.
What kind of arrangement was made to come to Trinidad?
ella me dijo que
She told me to pack a small suitcase, not to bring too many clothes, that she would have a taxi pick me up, and this taxi would take me to Tucupita, where I will spend one night. But I ended up spending 5 nights before the boat came.
So tell us now, how did you prepare to leave home by packing and not making your family suspicious?
The night before, which was Friday, I went out with my friends. And I then prepared a bag with my clothes. And I went to the party, and the next morning, the car passed and picked me up.
So you had planned not to go back home once you went to that party. It was to head for Trinidad.
Yes.
So did it concern you that your family would be worried that something probably bad has happened to you in Venezuela?
cuando no me comuniqué con ellos.
When I left, 2 days after that, my family began looking for me. They were concerned. I only was able to see their messages via Facebook 4 days after. I felt bad. I really felt bad. I felt that I had betrayed their trust, and they were worried. They were trying to contact all my friends, and no one can give an answer as to my whereabouts.
Now, what about your boyfriend? Was he worried as well?
Yes, he had left me thousands of messages. I told him I was at a friend's house.
So nobody in Venezuela knew that you were on your way to Trinidad?
Nadie supo hasta el momento que
No one knew that I had come to Trinidad until the moment when I was at a supermarket with persons who I did not know, and I did not want to be there. I tried to leave, but they warned me that if I did, something bad would happen to me. One of the girls secretly lent me a phone, and this is when I called my friend and explained everything.
Now there was this party. Before we go on, what was the arrangement after the party? Tell us about that.
el día después de la fiesta, él me
After
fue
the
a
party,
recoger
the
tipo
day
10 de la
after,
mañana.
the taxi came to pick me up at 10 a.m. The driver asked if I had an ID card because the Guardia Nacional would ask for ID on the way. The trip was 2.5 hours. The guards did stop us. They did search the car, and they did search the baggage. Then we arrived at Tucupita at night. I remained at a house where I had to wait. And then the next day, I was taken by somebody else who came to pick me up, and I was taken to a supermarket.
So I guess the supermarket is all part of the setup. Is that right?
The supermarket has a room, a waiting room, where from there they take us to the boat. Once I was in that supermarket, in that room, I suspected something. And I began feeling afraid. There was one girl with me, and I began asking questions. And she then asked me questions and asked me if my friend told me the truth about what I was going to do. I told her my friend told me that I can come and work at a restaurant. And this girl answered that if my friend had not said the truth, then I had come for something else.
Right, folks, that was Act 1.
Yep.
How it all began for Maria. Remember, we are doing this in recognition of the work done by the Counter Trafficking Unit and other agencies who rescued 27 Venezuelan women just a few days ago. We are reenacting their journey with Maria's story here this morning. So the story, it sounds similar, and the story actually has some reenactments of the journey. So you're comfortable listening on the radio, fine, you can follow it, or you can look at the reenactments as she tells her story on Facebook and YouTube. We're going to take a break, and then we return. We'll have the Act 2, which is the act. And again, Miss Alana Wheeler, who is the director of the Counter Trafficking Unit, will be here with us. Also, Superintendent Veronique of the Counter Trafficking Unit to enlighten you some more. All right, so we'll be back. Stay right there.
On Dependency will be a morning show in 2022.
That's right. On Dependency marks 20 years on the air. We're taking our groundbreaking brand of radio to a whole new audience. From the team that took you inside prisons in the UK.
I was being held and charged for conspiracy to import cocaine into the UK.
We spoke with men and women who have paid for their crimes.
They didn't tell me if I bring him back and I get catch, I'll get 14 years imprisonment. They didn't say that.
We brought you the glamour of feature film.
I do have a package to drop off in Trinidad.
For you, Alejandro, anything.
I will pay you each 5,000 euros.
And the squalor of death row.
I said come in Portland for my kids in the High Court in Port of Spain, and it was in come medication pain from the gate.
And of course, the testimonies of men and women with drug use disorders.
I was quite devastated and got involved with the wrong company.
The man who I used to deal with, he gave me a job to drive him around, just to go and buy cocaine and smoke cocaine.
From Toronto to London, New York to Los Angeles, Scarborough to Point Fortin, and everywhere in between, On Dependency has been your source for drug information. Join us as we move to Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. Don't miss On Dependency. Listen live on I-95.5 FM or watch the live stream on Facebook and YouTube. On Dependency. We don't just share stories. We change lives. We change lives.
Listen now, has noticed something about them new people and them up EOD. Where's that? Yo, the man that he passing up and down in front of here with a set of woman.
I really noticed some woman living there, you know. And they can't even say as much as good morning.
Well, listen now, I wonder if it's human trafficking. You think it's that?
So, how can you spot and identify perpetrators and victims of trafficking? Many victims are found living and working together in the same place and sleep in shared and inappropriate spaces. Victims work excessively long hours. They often sleep in the daytime and work long nights. They are often escorted everywhere they go and may appear to be malnourished. They may show signs of physical abuse, drug and alcohol use, and may also appear withdrawn, fearful, or intimidated. Victims who are migrants are often not in possession of their identity or immigration documents and have irregular immigration status. Perpetrators can be male or female and may appear to be managing or controlling the victims. And they may even at times appear to be the victim's best friend, boyfriend, or employer.
We are the Counter Trafficking Unit of the Ministry of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago, safeguarding human life.
Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on I-95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us, you missed Act 1 of Maria's journey to Trinidad. And so we go now to Act 2. We are reenacting this lady's journey here in recognition of the great work done by police officers, this CTU-led operation to rescue 27. Now, folks, I don't know if you all wrapping your minds around this. 27 people. And, you know, that house next door down the street where Venezuelan people stay in, you know, under what conditions they're here. That's something for you to think about. This is why the AV unit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service did those videos so that you can be aware. And if you are, then there are numbers to call. We'll share that with you. So let's go to
the act
of, and I said Ms. Wheeler will be here to explain the act means and the purpose.
Yeah, these are the three. This act means and purpose model is a tool used by law enforcement to determine whether the situation fits the definition of human trafficking, and the action is the thing that the trafficker does to the trafficking victim, using the means or the method that the trafficker uses to compel a person into the purpose or the type of exploitation. So see if you can determine in Maria's story what the act means and purpose of that crime in her case.
And if you just joined us, Facebook. See Facebook? That Facebook that people love so much. Now there's more. Instagram and TikTok and all of that. She was influenced by a friend. Friend request, come to Trinidad, everything nice, streets paved with gold. Found out something else when they got here. Let's go to Act 2. The act. So the plan was to stay one night, but you ended up staying 5 nights at the supermarket. Why did that happen?
Because they told me that the Coast Guard was on alert and we could not do the trip.
So which Coast Guard? Venezuelan Coast Guard or Trinidad and Tobago's Coast Guard?
Trinidad Coast Guard.
So for the nights that you stayed in the room, were you allowed to come out, or you all had just to stay there in that room till you were ready to leave?
No, we were not allowed to go out. We had a restroom there. They gave us food, but we were not allowed to go out.
Any means of communication? Radio, television, telephone?
No, there was no means of communication.
Now, is this supermarket located near to a port of entry to Venezuela?
Yes.
How did you feel about this? You just had closed for one night, but you had to stay 5 nights. You couldn't come out, you couldn't communicate with anyone. You all were just locked in this room. How did you feel about that?
I felt very, very bad. I felt as though I was drowning. I felt remorse. I was so sorry. I wanted to leave. I thought of my family, that they would be concerned. But most of all, I felt fear. Because when I commented that I wanted to leave, if there was any possibility that I could leave, they informed me that once I tried to get out of that room, harm would come to me.
So, there and then, you realized that this was not the picture that your friend painted for you, correct?
Yes. I realized then that it was not what she had said, because they told me that if I tried leaving, harm would come to me. In fact, they told me they would kill me because the person who would have paid for me and paid the taxi was actually not her, as she had previously said.
So during your stay there, did anyone try to harm you, physically molest you, or anything of the sort?
No, thank God no one tried to touch me or harm me.
Now, when the boat arrived and it was time for you to leave, who actually came for you?
Otro taxi.
Another taxi came to pick me up at the house, and they took us to a bus where other persons also would board to get on, to go.
Now, these other persons, were they part of the cargo to come to Trinidad as well?
Yes.
Now, do you remember how many people you would have met there?
I did not speak with no one. I always spoke to the girl who was with me, who came in the taxi with me when I left the city where I lived. And we were always together.
Oh, did you see anyone you recognized on that bus?
No.
Now, do you remember what time did the bus depart and how long was the journey to get to the vessel?
Salimos a las 5.
We left at 5 a.m. in the bus, and it took about 35 minutes to arrive at where the boat was.
So when you all got to the boat now, what were the instructions then?
No instructions were given. They took the baggage, they told us to sit where we could find space.
On the boat?
Yes.
Now, do you remember how many of you boarded that boat?
I cannot clearly remember. It may have been 15 or more persons.
Were you scared?
Yes, I was very afraid.
Now, did you at any point, before you boarded that boat, decided, look, you asked to go back home? Did you want to go back home?
I could not do it. The persons who had paid for my fare, they were present.
So when you saw that boat, did you realize that the dream that your friend sold you was not what you were about to experience?
When
I saw the boat, I was in total shock. Now, it seems as though I was living a nightmare. Because now, it was not my decision whether I go or I stay. I just knew now that I had to leave to Trinidad. It was either yes or yes. My friend told me, the person who was supposed to be my friend told me that the trip would be for 45 minutes. It did not happen that way. This trip was more than 5 hours. And we came up onto a problem in the boat, and we were there in the middle of the sea and could only then continue after 1 hour. And this is when I knew that it wasn't going to be as I thought.
So the men who paid for you to come to Trinidad, they were there supervising everyone getting on the boat?
Yes.
Were they carrying any weapons? Were they threatening to anyone?
No, I did not notice. At that moment, all I was doing was asking God to protect my family and to help me.
So the journey started. It should have been just 45 minutes, but it turned to 5 hours. How did that happen?
At the moment the boat was supposed to take off, there was no fuel, so we had to wait for fuel. Then we crossed a river and went to another river. There we stopped to eat and to stretch our legs. It became late, it got late. Then the boat had to stop in the middle of the sea and we spent an hour there because the captain of the boat was drinking, and we had to wait on another man to come, who was the one who eventually brought us to Trinidad.
So you think it's because of the captain's drinking, he went in a wrong direction, that made the journey longer?
It could have been.
So Maria, you're out in the ocean, that boat rocking. Weren't you scared? Wasn't everybody scared to be out in the middle of that ocean there with that boat just rocking from side to side waiting?
Yes, we were all afraid. The sea was rough. The boat moved a lot. We even had to make another stop in the middle of a very small island because we thought the Coast Guard were approaching, but eventually it was just another boat also coming to Trinidad.
So the other boat coming to Trinidad had Venezuelans on it as well?
Yes, there were several adults, but the rest were children.
Were the other passengers on the boat, as you said, were they coming for the same reason as you?
What I picked up was that some of them had family here, some of them were coming to work, most of them were men.
So when the boat got to Trinidad and Tobago waters now, what were the instructions?
Before the boat arrived at the shore, we were told that even before the boat arrived to the shore, we had to get out of the boat very quickly. We had to throw our baggage out very quickly and quickly pick it up. We had to run, but always bending down, bending our heads, and go towards some trees. They told us that we should not let anyone see us. They told us that we were not allowed to walk alone, that we should wait until several persons who were Trinidadians would come to show us where to walk or to show us the way.
Now, what time did the boat arrive, and do you remember where you all were dropped off?
We arrived approximately 3 a.m. in the morning. I do not know where I arrived. I only know that it was a beach, and then they took us to like a forest where we had to go up a mountain and then go down.
Now tell us about coming off of the boat or disembarking. Was it difficult? Did you all have to swim to shore, or was it close enough so that you can touch the shore and run into the bushes?
No, I just got out very quickly out of the boat. I threw my bag out, picked it up, and as quickly as possible, I ran.
Now, how old were you when you touched down on Trinidad and Tobago soil?
I was 17 years old.
So you're here. Now it's time to see what life has in store for you. You went through the forest. What happened on the other side of that?
Well, when we arrived there and we went through the forest, from there we were taken to a place that was completely alone except for several Trinidadian men. Then a van came to pick us up. They took us to a house where I saw the owner of the boat. They said that he was the owner of the house. Everybody began waiting on who was to come and pick them up. The boy that was there asked me where I was going. I told him I did not know, that I had to call my friend. He lent me the phone. I wrote her, but she never answered. By that time, it was 5 in the morning. She arrived like around 10. She sent me another telephone number and I called her. A taxi came to pick me up, and the taxi took me directly to a bar. This is when I entered in desperation and began feeling very nervous. I did not know what I was doing there. I thought that they were taking me to her house and that I would be able to stay there.
So they took you to a bar. What happened when you saw her?
Yo nunca la vi a ella. Ella nunca
I never
fue.
saw my friend. She never went. They took me to a bar where there were Chinese men. There was a mature lady who they said was in charge of the bar. They immediately took us upstairs to the rooms, and all I was asking is what I was doing there and where was my friend. And this is when they told me that my friend also worked at that bar.
Now, what was expected of you when they took you upstairs? Did you get a change of clothes, food to eat? What happened then?
Sí, una vez que yo llegué, yo tenía mi ropa.
Yes. Well, I had my clothes, but they were wet. So they gave me a chance to wash it. They lent me something to put on, and they gave me food. Then I received instructions from the mature lady in charge of the bar, who told me that I was lucky because that day there was no work, but I would have to prepare myself for the next day, which would be Tuesday.
The mature lady, was she Trinidadian, Chinese, Venezuelan?
She was a Venezuelan.
So what work did you get to do the following day?
Tenía que...
I had to give my service to any man that would choose me.
So was it a bar, a restaurant, or what, a nightclub? What was it?
It was a bar.
So what were you asked to do? Were you supposed to dress a certain way and just walk around the bar or serve drinks? What was expected of you really?
Sí, tenía que vestirme de
Yes,
otra
I had
manera.
to dress a certain way. I had to walk down the stairs. I had to accept if the men wanted to drink with me because this generated money to the bar.
So what was your frame of mind then? Did you say, look, you're going to go through with it, or you just wanted to go home at that point?
I was afraid. I was so afraid. I was very afraid. At one moment, I thought of escaping, but they told me that the man in charge of the bar was a very dangerous man who knew persons, and that if I did escape, the other day, most probably, I would be dead. And this is when I just cried and cried and contacted my mother and told her everything that had happened.
So did anyone who came into the bar, did they get a chance to sit with you or speak with you or try to solicit you in any way?
No, porque el bar abrió a las...
No, they did not have a chance to, because the bar opened at 6:30 p.m. We came downstairs at 7 p.m. The men who were there, they knew, they had police people that they knew policemen. And the men that were there, they thought that these men that were there were their friends of the bar owners. But actually, they were policemen and no one knew. So only after the police took out their arms and said that they were police is when everything stopped.
The first time you had a chance to speak with your mother, what was that conversation like?
Fue el día anterior, antes que llegara
When
la
I
policía,
first contacted my mom, I did it before the police arrived at the bar. I called her. I was very afraid. And I told her that I had come here because my friend had told me there was an opportunity to work. And she said something completely different to what was happening. I told her that I had been taken to this bar without my consent. And my mom just began to cry and cry. She asked me to give her names. She asked me if there were persons in Venezuela that was involved in this. I told her yes. She told me that they would do whatever was possible to get me out. She also told me that I should try to escape And I told her I could not because I would be dead, but that I would try to solve this.
Now, was it hard for you after speaking with your mom to go back to work?
Yes, it was very difficult.
So was it a police raid that stopped all activities for the night and, people were arrested?
Yes, all the girls were arrested. The workers of the bar were also arrested. But the persons visiting the bar were not arrested.
Really? The persons visiting the bar were not arrested, they were allowed to just leave?
Yes, because when the police arrived, they sent us upstairs, and I heard one of the workers saying that the police had them on the floor and then they let them go.
And what happened after that? Were you arrested?
What happened after that was the police interviewed us.
They asked us for the names of the persons that were in charge of the bar. The mature lady who was in charge of the bar told me not to say my age, but I had already said everything. I said the truth. I said I had arrived the day before. I said that I had not started working there as yet. I said that I was 17 years old. And I pointed to the woman in the corner who was the lady in charge of the bar. She said that she had no idea that she had minors working in the bar. She thought they were of legal age. All this brought on a consequence, a stress, and I fainted. When I revived, I then cried with the people around me, and then I was taken to the police station.
Now, I know you were at least happy to be in the arms of law enforcement, the Counter Trafficking Unit, than for where you were before, right?
Yes. I believe it was a miracle from God. He sent me help. I believe he sent help for all of us that were there, because I was not the only one that was forced to be there. The majority of them were there and they did not want to be there.
You were arrested, you were taken to the station. What happened after that?
That night, the minors were separated from the adults. We were interviewed, and the next day, the Venezuelan embassy visited us. We were again interviewed.
We were taken to do a medical checkup, and then we were given food, and then we were taken to do other medicals, and then taken to home.
And that was the act, means, and purpose, as demonstrated by the story of Maria. Now, this is the crux of the matter when it comes to human trafficking. The action, which is to induce, recruit, harbor, transport, provide, or obtain the means by force, by fraud, or coercion, and the purpose, commercial sex or labor and services.
And Ms. Wheeler will delve into that a little more so you could understand. Folks, I hope you're following this step by step. Huh?
Yep.
I hope as you listen or look at Maria telling her story and the reenactments that we spliced in between, I'm looking at that sea, and I always tell people I thank God that's why I joined the regiment under the Coast Guard, because I admire Coast Guard, I personally, I do. Really, really do, because I don't like the sea. You want to torture me, put me in a pirogue in the middle of the ocean. I sell it out to everybody. Because I really don't like, but you just picked here. As Maria explaining this, I'm looking at the rough seas here that we had in the reenactment here, and I'm thinking, how, can't you have some, even just admiration for wanting to brave those waters, to come here, not knowing, it's like almost like playing Russian roulette, that trip could be easy, or it could be really difficult, or you could never make it, as we've heard happen to a lot of people who try to get here. So, and nobody would, well, apart from Maria telling one side of the story here now, there's another side of the story Maria telling here now where she voluntarily, the family weren't suffering, they were well taken care of, but she wanted new horizons. I can't get over that comment.
New horizons?
New
She
horizons.
wanted to experience something different.
Yes, she wanted to, yes.
Unfortunately for her, the what she was promised, or what she was, the fairy tale that was sold to her turned out to be something entirely different. And again, this is the coercion, the deceit, the deception that traffickers use to lure people away from their homes and their families into a very dangerous situation. And thankfully for Maria, she was rescued before she would have been forced to have sex with men for money.
So if we could stop one man this morning from purchasing sex, just one, because I want you to know that when you have your way with that young lady who's 15, 16, maybe you don't know her age, they try their best to make them look adult. Remember, you just paid to have your way with someone who's drugged, and whatever money you pay, she's not getting half of that. Just remember that when you walk out of that room, she may not see any of it. When you walk out of that room and wipe your face and mouth and everything else, you just took advantage of someone. If you have a daughter, you think you could like that happen to your daughter? Let's go to a break and we come back with the conclusion. Maria concludes, and I want you to all to listen to exactly what she says about Venezuelan women coming to Trinidad and Tobago. You're listening to Dependency. We'll be back.
Thank you for calling the Counter Trafficking Unit of Trinidad and Tobago. How may I help you?
The Trinidad and Tobago's Counter Trafficking Unit, also called the CTU, was established through an Act of Parliament, the Trafficking in Persons Act, Chapter 1210, or the TIPS Act. We are a specialized, multidimensional, civilian-led agency under the Ministry of National Security, responsible for the daily operations of the counter-trafficking response of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. We implement government policies developed by the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons, effective identification of victims and witnesses, prevention of trafficking, protection and prosecution, all through effective partnerships. We also operate a toll-free anonymous hotline, 800-4288-4CTU, where the public can report possible cases of human trafficking. We screen and interview persons to identify possible victims of trafficking. We refer identified victims to appropriate agencies for support and care. Specially trained, positively vetted police officers working in the CTU gather evidence, investigate, and prosecute human trafficking cases. In keeping with our public education mandate, we also deliver training to our many stakeholders and partners. We collaborate with local, regional, and international organizations, NGOs, churches, and faith-based organizations to educate and warn the public on how to recognize human trafficking. We are the Counter Trafficking Unit of the Ministry of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago, safeguarding human life.
Eye on Dependency will be a morning show in 2022.
That's right. Eye on Dependency marks 20 years on the air. We're taking our groundbreaking brand of radio to a whole new audience. From the team that took you inside prisons in the UK
I was being held and charged for conspiracy to import cocaine into the UK.
We spoke with men and women who have paid for their crimes.
They didn't tell me if I bring him back and I get catch, I'll get 14 years imprisonment. They didn't say that.
We brought you the glamour of feature film.
I do have a package to drop off in Trinidad.
For you, Alejandro, anything.
I will pay you each 5,000 euros.
And the squalor of death row.
I said come in Port from a case in the High Court in Port Spain, and it was and come and get and pin from the gate.
And of course, the testimonies of men and women with drug use disorders.
I was quite devastated and got involved with the wrong company.
The man who I used to deal with, he gave me a job to drive him around. That's to go and buy cocaine and smoke cocaine.
From Toronto to London, New York to Los Angeles, Scarborough to Point Fortin, and everywhere in between, Eye on Dependency has been your source for drug information. Join us as we move to Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. Don't miss Eye on Dependency. Listen live on I-95.5 FM or watch the live stream on Facebook and YouTube. Eye on Dependency. We don't just share stories. We change lives. We change lives.
Ion Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on I-95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Thank you for staying with us. This is Eye on Dependency. We are sharing the story of Maria with you this morning as we highlight the work of the Counter Trafficking Unit and other arms of law enforcement for their efforts to stem the tide of human trafficking, which is a major crime worldwide, not just here in Trinidad and Tobago, but across the world. And we want to thank you for tuning in on I-95.5 FM, on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. And for those of you who are tuned in on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.
Yes, and for all you folks from overseas who tuning in, Beverly and out there in Brooklyn and all the others, thank you. Annette, not yet, we'll let you know. All right, but thank you, Annette, for being a #1 fan as always.
Yes.
That 8 million in worth of drugs, folks. We have a picture of it to show you in case you didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
This was seized in a gated community by the SIU. 4 Chinese immigrants were arrested. We'll tell you more about that after the conclusion of Maria. Let's go to the conclusion of Maria and listen carefully. So Maria, know that you are safe in the arms of the right people. What would you like to say to your friends back in Venezuela?
Quisiera decirles que no se puede confiar en nadie, que no todo es como te lo pintan.
What I want to tell everyone is that you should not trust any and everybody. You cannot trust everyone that tells you that you can come to this place and you will be able to work and everything would be okay. No, there is a network of traffickers that will try to make you leave from 17 and even younger than 17. They would want you to make this trip. But believe me, even though the situation in Venezuela is difficult, even though you may not have all the resources, and even though your parents may not be able to give you all that you wish, there is a reality, and I say this generally. The most important thing is always health, your family, the people that love you, your meals. It doesn't matter how little it is. It doesn't matter how humble it is. But you should not leave Venezuela looking for other horizons and looking for other ways, the way that I did.
Pero por favor, se los pido de todo corazón, por todo lo que yo pasé, que no es nada fácil.
Please,
No es
please,
fácil
please,
que tú
I
confíes
beg
en
you
una
from my
persona
heart.
y te diga
This
que
is
sí,
not
vente,
easy. You
esto es
cannot
bonito,
confide in people that you do not know. They will tell you one thing, but it really is another. And you can then fall the way that I did. I must give thanks to God that I was able to get help. And if ever something like this should happen to you, that you were brought here, fooled, thinking it was something else, there are agencies, there are people who can help you. And they have helped me as though they were my family, even though they didn't have to. And they will help you too. We are trying to save you. And one more thing that I would like to mention to all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I would like to clear this up, that not every woman that leaves Venezuela to come to Trinidad comes to prostitute herself. Some come to look for a work that dignifies because they have children and they have family. They are looking for a better future that Venezuela at this time cannot give them. I asked all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, please, from the bottom of my heart, whenever you see a Venezuelan woman, do not look at her in a bad manner. Not all of us think the same way. Not all of us have the same motive. We just want to progress.
So there you have it, folks. That was Maria's story. So Maria, know that you are safe in the arms of the right people. What would you like to say to your friends back in Venezuela?
Quisiera decirles que no se puede confiar en nadie, que no todo es como te lo pintan.
What I want to tell
Muchísimas veces
everyone is that
te dicen
you should
algo,
not
pero
trust any and everybody. You cannot trust everyone that tells you that you can come to this place and you will be able to work and everything would be okay. No, there is a network of traffickers that will try to make you leave from 17 and even younger than 17. They would want you to make this trip. But believe me, even though the situation in Venezuela is difficult, even though you may not have all the resources, and even though your parents may not be able to give you all that you wish, there is a reality, and I say this generally. The most important thing is always health, your family, the people that love you, your meals. It doesn't matter how little it is. It doesn't matter how humble it is. But you should not leave Venezuela looking for other horizons and looking for other ways, the way that I did.
Pero por favor, se los pido de todo corazón, por todo lo que yo pasé, que no es nada fácil.
Please,
No es
please,
fácil
please,
que tú
I
confíes
beg
en
you
una persona
from my heart.
y te diga
This
que
is
sí,
not
vente,
easy. You
esto es
cannot
bonito,
confide in people that you do not know. They will tell you one thing, but it really is another. And you can then fall the way that I did. I must give thanks to God that I was able to get help. And if ever something like this should happen to you, that you were brought here, fooled, thinking it was something else, there are agencies, there are people who can help you. And they have helped me as though they were my family, even though they didn't have to. And they help you too. We are trying to save you. And one more thing that I would like to mention to all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I would like to clear this up. Not every woman that leaves Venezuela to come to Trinidad comes to prostitute herself. Some come to look for a work that dignifies because they have children and they have family. They are looking for a better future that Venezuela at this time cannot give them. I asked all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, please, from the bottom of my heart, whenever you see a Venezuelan woman, do not look at her in a bad manner. Not all of us think the same way. Not all of us have the same motive. We just want to progress.
So there you have it, folks. That was Maria's story. As sad as it is, at least she is one who was rescued. There are thousands of stories like Maria's. As much as they come to hand, in conjunction with the Counter Trafficking Unit, we will bring them to you. The objective here is for our friends in Venezuela to learn from this experience. Thank you very much for joining us. See you again next time.
The Ministry of National Security's Counter Trafficking Unit, led by Director Alana Wheeler, continues its work to investigate human trafficking in Trinidad and Tobago. 4 persons appeared virtually before the Port of Spain Magistrates Court on Friday, April 16, 2021, on 8 criminal charges collectively for human trafficking and offences under the Children's Act. Following an exercise early on the morning of Tuesday, April 13, 2021, with officers of the TTPS Special Investigations Unit, Special Task Force, Guard and Emergency Branch, Emergency Task Force, and Crime Scene Investigations Unit, the CTU led a team of officers into Diego Martin Blue Basin area. 4 persons were subsequently charged for sex trafficking of a Venezuelan minor. Mr. Karen Pascal, Mr. Shaquille Noel, Mr. Jose Rafael Sozano Perez, and Mr. Kuda James. Both Mr. Pascal and Mr. Noel were charged with receiving, transporting, and harboring a child for the purpose of child trafficking. Mr. Pascal was additionally charged with knowingly receiving a financial benefit from the offense of trafficking in persons, causing a child to prostitute, controlling a child prostitute, and facilitating child prostitution. Mr. Perez was charged with receiving and transporting a child for the purpose of child trafficking, while Mr. James was charged with sexual penetration of a child. Venezuelan Geraldine Abro, 19, and Kenneth Alion, 30, have been charged with trafficking in persons and false imprisonment.
One of the operatives and a man who had been in the vineyard or out on the battlefield, I should say, for years, and now spearheading operations at the Counter Trafficking Unit. We going to speak with Superintendent Veronique. Good morning, sir.
In France.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, good morning. Very faintly.
Very faint. Could you... I don't know if it's your end or our end, but good morning to you, Superintendent.
Yeah, morning to you. Are you hearing me better?
Yes, much better.
Right.
Right. So let's get right into it, sir.
Natasha. Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, let's get right into it. You all running a serious operation here in the Counter Trafficking Unit. When
yes, we are.
that that first call is received, tell the public what goes into really planning an operation of this magnitude, especially in light of the rescue or the last operation that you all did.
Definitely. Well, first, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Well, on receiving that initial information, first and foremost, the investigator is assigned to confirm and quantify the information. So the information comes in, but the investigator is assigned to confirm it and quantify it. Then that investigator will develop the report quickly as possible with specific information based on his or her investigation. This report would include the nature of the crime, what type of offenses are being committed, where it is committed, how many victims, who are the alleged offenders, and whatever recommendations which may include in a draft operation plan. Now, the TTPS has a standard operation procedure for developing and executing operation plans, which is based on a particular process. So if the investigator recommends that the TTPS intervene as quickly as possible and that the information has supported the crime, which is human trafficking, and it is being committed and the victim's lives are in imminent danger, then the process is immediately initiated, especially when there's minors involved. So the investigator is advised to obtain a search warrant as outlined in necessary legislation, and then he commences the necessary paperwork. And then from that, the investigator's findings, decision is made, and a risk analysis and a risk matrix on the levels of risk to the officers and the persons involved is done. Now, the risk analysis is based on two types of risks, either high risk or unknown risk, but both entails the intervention of trained tactical teams, such as the IATF, the MOPS, the GB, or specially trained officers from task forces. And then we'll hold a meeting now with the tactical team leaders who would initiate a reconnaissance of the location, and that can be done either in person or with a drone or through the internet, to identify any further risks to the location, such as guard dogs, electrical fences, booby traps, hostile neighbors, or other vital information that supports the conduct of the operation, which will minimize the harm occurring to officers and persons. Safety is very important. Then the tactical leader will develop a complete plan with the consideration given to time, weather conditions, the staging area, entry point, the type of equipment needed, the number of initial officers needed for the entry, vehicles or amount of vehicles, and in particular emergency vehicles with a mapped route to the nearest health facility. Most importantly, the tactical leader's plan would include a map indicating how the operation will be executed. Then, both the investigator and the tactical team leader will collaborate on the most appropriate time and date for the execution of the operation. So the plans are then submitted for approval to the most senior officer in consultation with the legal officer to say whether we go on the operation or not. If we go on the operation, the initial entry is conducted by a tactical team, as I spoke about the MOPS or the ITF or the GEB, who will ensure that the area is safe for other officers to enter by detaining all the occupants and rescuing all the victims. Once that is complete, the investigator then executes the search warrant with the assistance of other officers who would record copious contemporaneous notes of everything that happened on the location and retrieve all evidence necessary for prosecuting the case. So those are some of the areas that go into the planning of a big human trafficking operation. So in summary, we'd have to cover the initial information, do the intent or the purpose, the method of approach. We must know our objective, the risk, we must have our administrative needs, the legal considerations, the human rights issues, and any contingencies necessary in our operational planning.
Right, that sounds like very extensive work, and again, you're getting a lot of congratulations online from our audience on Facebook, congratulating the law enforcement units that are involved. How many units exactly are involved in an operation such as this?
Well, initially, an operation of this nature would comprise of the Counter Trafficking Unit, the Special Investigations Unit, CSIs, and a tactical team. However, with information gathered, there may be need for more or other units to be involved, like the Child Protection Unit, the Domestic Violence Unit, Financial Investigations Unit, because there may be money on board, canines, or Cybercrime Unit, audiovisual, because we like to record contemporaneously what's happening, and any outside agencies such as immigration, and most importantly, Spanish interpreters where necessary.
Indeed. Someone on Facebook is asking, how long does the planning take? How many hours of planning does it take
Planning,
to execute this?
The time spent on planning the operation is based on the risk identified, right? So it may take considerable time, sometimes days or even weeks. However, due to the exigencies of the nature of the information, we may have to accelerate the process as time may be the essence. So a good example of it with what was identified that there are children involved, we would move faster. Then although efforts would be made to expedite the process, consideration would now be given to the safety of the children and the type of equipment that we utilize.
Yep. And given now that we are in a pandemic, what specific protocols are put in place to protect not only the victims but the officers involved?
Excellent question. The pandemic has become one of the leading challenges for the TTPS. Law enforcement is a human interaction occupation.
Yes.
Hence, then a police officer encountering the virus is close to being almost inevitable. For operations, we provide as much personal protection equipment as possible for our officers. So also we minimize the initial contact with persons to the tactical team. And on large operations, we also have personal protection equipment for the victims and the suspects to minimize the transmission of the virus.
Yep.
No, well, I'll save that question for last because the poster asked another question. But let's go right into after the victims are rescued. How many hours would it take to process all of this? Let's say look at these 26 people. How long? We can just imagine.
Yes, with 26 persons, it is a large operation. And once the victims were removed from the rescue of the location, they are immediately taken for medical attention, where we get police medical report, which are obtained on their behalf. And then once they are cleared for COVID-19 symptoms, they are screened for indicators of human trafficking by the CTU, which takes about, let's say, 90 minutes, depending on the language barrier. And we also have a Spanish or any other language interpreter is always present during that process. And this all depends on the welfare of the victim. So sometimes the victims may need a shower, a meal, and rest prior to the screening process. So the entire process can range from, let's say, a couple hours to the entire day or days, depending on the circumstances.
And what are the protocols to separate the sheep from the goat, so to speak, male, female, and minors among those victims?
Excellent question. Again, firstly, the police will separate the suspects from the potential victims. So there will be no communication between the both. Once the victim identifies him or herself as a child, the Children's Authority is immediately contacted, and they will be cleared for COVID-19 symptoms and placed in a safe location until the screening for the human trafficking indicators. A similar process is adopted for the males and the females. So they too will be taken for medical attention and placed in a safe location.
All right. And if suspects are on the scene, happen to be on the scene, because we know that usually they are not, what happens then to them?
Well, if they're there, once they are caught, they're immediately separated, arrested, told of the offense. We go through a legal process, inform of the legal rights. We also take them to seek medical attention to be cleared for any COVID-19 symptoms or get a full medical on them. And following which we will house them for safekeeping at a separate police station until we go through the process of interviews, searches to houses to look for evidence, other identification processes are also initiated, And then our legal officer is consulted during this entire process. And if necessary, for further consultation, is had with the DPP to advise on further charges to be laid on the suspect. So this area is also included in our operational plan, so that the entire process goes seamless and reduces the time the suspects remain in our custody prior to attending the court.
Superintendent, we cannot commend you all enough. I mean, you should see the comments online as well for all the officers involved in your continued struggle and fight to bring to heel this international
criminal activity.
This international criminal activity. We want to thank you all so very, very, very much for your dedication and hard work. And
thank you very much, sir.
Anything you would like to say to the public before we let you go, because we know you are even today have to work so as well. So
definitely, because as we speak, we are conducted an inquiry relative to human trafficking. So I just want to thank you all, I and Dependency, for having me this wonderful program. It's my pleasure to address this pressing dilemma for human trafficking. See, you all spoke about the acts, the means, and the purpose.
Yes.
And that video or that of Maria, very emotional. It had me a little emotional, right? It's because it's a very horrific account. So imagine this is what we face every day when we encounter these victims, where she was groomed to come to Trinidad and then exploited. And you see step by step from the journey to the exploitation and to the deception, so it was very good for you all to highlight that.
Yes.
You all mentioned the U.S. State Department report,
yes,
and where we as law enforcement and now we're trying to our best to put us back into a tier 2. There is a committee put together, which I am on, to respond to the deficiencies in the report. Right, so we have been showing some success over the past year in terms of charging at least 43 persons over the past, let's say, 4 or 5 years, but it has ramped up over the past year. You mentioned matters in court, and because of the fact we are not getting conviction, it doesn't mean that we are not working. The convictions depend on the judiciary. So we have made some recommendations to have our matters fast-tracked. So in closing, I would just like to thank all who contributed to the success of the CTU. Firstly, the director, Ms. Wheeler. Acting DCP Jacob and his executive has been very supportive to the CPU. Former Senior Soup Paponet, who worked with the unit over the past year. And all the hard-working investigators of the CTU and the SITF, that is Special Investigation Task Force. All the civilian agencies, because we can't do it alone. The counselors, the interpreters, the caregivers. And then our present Senior Soup, Mr. Cohen Francis and his team. And not even out the technical support that we get for crime scene units, and then the tactical units such as the MOPS, the GB, and the IATF. And finally, I just want to make mention of one person, or the legal officer who provides us with sound legal advice during each investigation. And, it helps develop the officers into prosecution, good matters with quality, so that we could stand the test in the courts when the matters are being heard. So with that, I want to thank you all for having me.
Superintendent Veronique, God bless you all. God cover you all. Stay strong, you and the unit, that's the Counter Trafficking Unit of Trinidad and Tobago. And stay safe as well. God bless you.
Thank you very much, sir.
This applause is for you and your team.
Thank you, sir.
And that was Superintendent Veronique of the Counter Trafficking Unit, and we go straight to the lady in charge, the top lady, the top dog, Miss Alana Wheeler, Director of the Counter Trafficking Unit. Good morning to you, ma'am.
Morning to Garth and Natasha, and morning to all the listeners and the viewers.
Thank you so much for joining us and giving us a bit of your time here this morning. There's a question on Facebook I'll throw in a while. I'll listen, hold on. Miss Wheeler, so you all are at it again. Tell us about the unit and the hard work that you all have been doing and bring us up to speed, please.
Well, firstly, I wanted to really commend again the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Commissioner of Police, the current Commissioner of Police and previous Commissioners of Police. They have always been fully supportive of the work of the unit and providing us with the policing resources that we require to do this very hard work. I would have liked Superintendent Veronique to really speak about the accomplishments of the police, because this last case that we got was one of several cases, several success stories from the Special Investigation Task Force. They are a special team of officers. As we speak, they are on the ground working diligently on another matter. And they have done some human service with respect to the fight against human trafficking, and they have really been supporting the Counter Trafficking Unit. That team was specially set up by the Commissioner of Police to support the human trafficking investigations, because as you know, no one unit or one agency can do this. The Counter Trafficking Unit, we are a very small team, and we rely very heavily on the expertise and the strength and the numbers of other agencies and other partners. And Superintendent Veronique would have mentioned some of the other policing units with whom we work. But especially I would like to mention those operational teams in the TTPS, the MOPS, the Interagency Task Force and Guard and Emergency Branch. The CSI also, they have provided some very strong support operationally to the work of the unit. And of course, for the Commissioner of Police, Acting Commissioner McDonald Jacob, he has really continues to extend the support to the work of the unit. So we can't do it alone. One thing that the superintendent mentioned also is with respect to the victims and the importance of separating the children from the women and from the men, and the importance of the care for the victims. And Maria also mentioned it in her testimony and in her sharing. You know, where Maria, some things that, you know, stood out for me really is Maria said, you know, she was praying and asking God to save her and to rescue her from the situation, and the others also. And she thanked God for hearing her prayer and answering her prayer. And, you know, that is so important, that divine intervention in these matters is critical in really rescuing and delivering victims from these situations. We rely heavily, as I said, on many other agencies. There are international agencies that give us the support that we need for the victims and the victim care. There are churches and faith-based organizations and NGOs that assist us with the shelter and the care of the victims. It is very costly to care for even one victim. And therefore, you can imagine having 26 or 27. And this is just from one case. We have had previous cases where you've had like 45 persons rescued. You know, so sometimes you get them in very large numbers, and you still have to mete out all this care to ensure that the rights of the individuals are protected. So again, I really want to extend thanks to all those agencies that have worked with us. The Ministry of Social Development has really given us some support with respect to the care of the victims. So just to go into some of the work that the Counter Trafficking Unit has been doing, over the past year, we've conducted several sensitization and training sessions with different agencies. And I want to go as far back as to around April of last year. You would have seen at the end of the Maria testimony where we spoke about a rescue that took place and some charges that were preferred against persons in the Diego Martin area involving a child victim. In June of last year, the Counter Trafficking Unit in Trinidad and Tobago was commended by Interpol, and Interpol is the international policing agency that many police services all over the world are members of that organization. We were commended for responding to an Interpol Blue Notice. And an Interpol Blue Notice is where a notice is sent out to all the countries all over the world looking for a particular individual, right, or identifying a particular case that needs to be addressed if it's in your country, if those persons are in your country. And the police officers were able to successfully locate those individuals, and out of locating those suspects, and these were suspects who were part of an international human trafficking ring. Those suspects were located, and out of locating those suspects, we were able to rescue 9 Venezuelan women from that particular case. And that happened around the month of June of last year, and subsequently persons were charged. And the persons who were charged in that matter were Venezuelan nationals, and we also had Trinidad nationals. Maria mentioned in her testimony of someone recruiting her via Facebook. And what we have found in many of the cases involving the South American or even victims generally from other countries, most victims are recruited by their own nationals, persons of their own nationality, and persons from their own culture and their own community. Victims are rarely recruited in our cases by strangers. It's always someone who you know or a friend of a friend of a friend. And so we have Venezuelan nationals who are recruiting Venezuelans in their own country, and they are arranging for them to come across to Trinidad, linking up with the organized criminal groups operating between Trinidad and Venezuela and in Trinidad and Tobago. And we found that even here in Trinidad and Tobago, the exploitation is being done by their own nationals in addition to local persons. So you find it is a very complex web of organized criminal persons who are involved in this crime. So I just wanted to highlight that from the policing perspective, that the officers really continue to do very, very hard work. They are working against the tide because sometimes they work with resources that, they require more resources. They're working in a COVID situation where they also have to consider their own health and well-being, and even that of their relatives, because sometimes you have officers whose relatives are in quarantine and whose relatives have passed away because of COVID, and still these officers come out and they do the work that they're required to do or that we expect of them as a country. So also in addition to some of these sessions we've done, we have done some work with the university students, the undergrad students. Last year we did some of the social work undergrad students and sensitizing them to trafficking. We've done some police officers at the police academy in partnership with the IOM. We had a human trafficking awareness week last year in recognition of the United Nations World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. And during that week, which was the last week in July, we reached out to the Spanish-speaking migrant community, and we had a bilingual session with them. We also had the Ministry of Labor come on board and speak about the labor rights of migrant workers. And this would have been on your program. We launched the Maria testimony, which you would have heard earlier today. And we did a session on online grooming and sexual exploitation with parents and teachers and even young persons. And that alone is a whole session by itself. We also did some work with the UE Institute for Gender Development, where they did a session. And of course, we had the spoken word competition in partnership with Ion Dependency and the Civilian Conservation Corps. So there was a lot of sensitization taking place last year. With the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force and the Global Financial Action Task Force, we did a presentation to them, and these are global financial experts, global financial analysts. We spoke to them and shared a case study with them on a human trafficking case in Trinidad and Tobago. And, we were recognized by these two bodies. As you know, these two bodies deal with anti-money laundering and terrorist financing. And these are the experts that would look for all the financial crimes committed in offenses. And we had the opportunity to present one of our case studies in those two forums on two occasions last year. We've also reached out to members of the intelligence community. We've done some things on redefining masculinities, and the list goes on and on and on with respect to some of the outreach that we have done. What I would say are the last couple of months we've been working on is we have been targeting the frontline officers in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and also in the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. They are the first responders that would possibly interact with a victim of trafficking. And we have been training or sensitizing them on how to screen or what kinds of questions to ask a migrant or a potential victim when they come into contact with them. Those sessions have been going really well. They have been eye-opening for these frontline officers. And we continue to do that work. The latter part of last year, we also did some training with shelters, some of the shelter staff and the managers of children's homes, because as you know, child victims, oftentimes they stay at children's homes and at these shelters. And we've done some work with the NGOs and faith-based organizations to sensitize them when they have to render care and assistance to victims of trafficking. For persons who are Newsday readers, we have been publishing some articles in the Monday Newsday from about the middle of November, and we just have a couple more articles to go. We thank the Newsday, Trinidad Newsday, for giving us these articles free of charge, where we are able to educate the members of the public and, you know, give them a sense of what goes on, what's a typical day at the Counter Trafficking Unit. You know, so many times we look on the outside and we look in and we assume that certain things are happening or not happening, and there is a lot of work. There are many, many moving parts when it comes to responding to human trafficking. There is the investigation, there is the victim care, there is the international element, there is the embassy element. There are medical issues to treat with. Many victims have many medical issues, in addition to the trafficking issues that they have to deal with. And there are so many, many moving parts when we have a trafficking case to deal with. And so, you know, we just wanted to really make the public aware of this, that it's not as easy a fix as it seems to be, because trafficking is a very complex crime, and trafficking is a crime that involves so many different persons, right? So many different persons and so many different players are involved in trafficking. And for the state to respond to it, it requires all of these necessary resources. So I'll pause on that note and start back to you, Garth and Natasha.
Yes, I mean, a lot of information there, and you answered some of the questions that were posed on Facebook. But one thing that we want you to elaborate on a little bit is the Trafficking in Persons report from the U.S. State Department and Trinidad and Tobago's position on that, and the fact that we have not been able to secure any convictions, although all of the work has gone into making the arrest, rescuing the victims, and supervising their care. Why are we unable to convict?
Right. Okay. Well, the Trafficking in Persons report, as you know, is an annual report that is published by the United States Department of State. It is published every June, and they rank countries according to how we're responding in the United States Trafficking Victims and Protection Act of 2000. We are ranked Tier 1 is the highest rank. Then you have Tier 2, then Tier 2 watch list, and then Tier 3, which is blacklist. For 4 consecutive years, Trinidad and Tobago has been at Tier 2. Last year, we were downgraded to Tier 2 watch list. That means that, you know, we need to sort of step up our game, basically, because if we remain at Tier 2 watch list this year, it means that there may be an automatic downgrade to Tier 3, which is a blacklist, which is you don't want to be at blacklist, right, for anything in any country. So we continue to do work. We work very closely with the U.S. Embassy here in Port of Spain. We have some very good partners there, and National Security Ministry. We have a very good relationship with them, and so we've been working with them to really see how we can improve. As I said, you know, this is an effort for not one agency. It's a national effort across the board. And the TIP report really measures the government agency's response. So while you have a lot of international organizations doing very good work, NGOs doing very good work, churches, faith-based organizations doing very good work, the report and the U.S. in that report assesses government agencies' response. So they are looking at what we as government workers, as public officers, are doing in responding to human trafficking. Based on their analysis, it isn't so much how serious the problem is in Trinidad, but it's really what is the country doing to respond adequately to the problem. The kind of resources we're putting into it, the kind of investigations, how aggressively are we pursuing investigations, what sort of protection are we giving to victims. They measure us on the type of awareness raising and trainings that we do with the stakeholders, and also on the kind of partnerships we have. And I mean, we have lots of partnerships in Trinidad. I think the main area really is the prosecutions and gaining convictions. Superintendent Veronique would have explained how the convictions work. The police do very diligent work, very hard work. They take the matters to court. One of the things we have found is that many of the trafficking persons who are charged, they end up getting bail. When they get bail, they tend to go back to their trafficking practices. So, the police has no control over that, neither do we. We charge them, we bring them before the court, and it is up to the courts and the judiciary to make a determination. Because many times trafficking suspects can be flight risks, right? Because remember, this is an international crime.
Correct.
And there is crossing of borders that is taking place, whether legally or illegally. So when you give someone bail, you put them back out there to continue plying their trade.
Yep.
Right? That's a whole nother debate by itself. But these are some of the challenges that we have found bringing the persons to court. So you bring them to court, you charge them again, they again get bail again.
Ms. Wheeler?
So we have no control over that. And then, of course, the court system, we rely heavily on the court system to really bring the matters from magistrate court to high court.
Now, Ms.
So
Wheeler,
far, we have 7 matters committed to stand trial in the high court.
now, Ms. Wheeler, can recommendations be made because we know here at Dependency, know how serious getting to tier 1 is. Can recommendations be made to the judiciary that a special court be set up for trafficking cases alone, human trafficking cases alone?
Yes, I know that we have the Ministry of National Security, I know, has been in discussions with them with respect to that, and those recommendations were made. And so it's really a matter, again, as I said, the separation of state and the judiciary, it's really up to the judiciary to make that decision as to how they will respond best, to treat with this crime. And the convictions, as I said, we have 7 matters waiting to stand trial. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions has also been engaged to see how what we can do at the state level to really expedite and push these matters even further, to get some attention in the High Court, really.
Maybe we need to look as well at amending the legislation to make the human trafficking offenses non-bailable offenses.
Yes, and that is also being looked at by the Office of the Attorney General. In fact, we have compiled draft recommendations. The Office of the Attorney General has been working closely with National Security to draft recommendations. So we do have a draft bill, and that will be taken to through the regular processes at the appropriate time.
Right.
Ms. Wheeler, this is something that I think we need to always keep on the front burner. People get uncomfortable when you call out their institution, but we here on Independency still insist that, you're talking about seven matters, right? You refer to 7 matters. Going back, how far we talking about here?
These would have been cases with persons charged from 2013 when the legislation was proclaimed.
2013.
Wow.
Now
So,
tell
yeah.
me.
7 years.
And you see, this is the thing about court matters. You expect victims, especially, to remember every detail of 7-8 years later.
Yeah.
And also the other challenge also is a lot of victims would have moved on with their lives.
There you go.
Especially if they live in other countries. The challenge with when they go back to their country, if you try to reach out to them 7 or 8 years later, you may not be able to find them.
Of course.
So that's the challenges. And then they may have moved on with their lives. Some of them may get married, have children. The spouse is not aware of what they had experienced in Trinidad. They don't really want to recount it. There was one case, they didn't even want to hear from us because they have moved on with their lives. So when you wait so long and there's such a large gap, really and truly, someone trying to remember something and rehash a traumatic and extremely traumatic experience 7 to 10 years later is really, really a challenge. So the police really do a lot of work. We also want to encourage the police to bring matters to the courts and have them tried as quickly as possible. So even the police officers can move on, because sometimes the complainant in the matter may have retired by then.
Right.
He may have moved to another section, may have been promoted to some rank, and has to now go back into his notes to try to remember what happened.
Yes. It's really sad. And again, you could just, you and your unit, and as you say, the law enforcement officers can do your part, but somebody has to take that baton over the line. And the judiciary, we have to continue to plead with them to understand how important this is for country, not for the unit, but it's important for country. And when the tips report goes down, they don't call out the judiciary, they say the government of Trinidad and Tobago.
Correct.
Which is
It is a
unfortunate.
national problem and it is a national effort. And I mean, you spoke earlier about the demand for these services, and persons with this is a whole thing with vice, dealing with persons' vices and money at the end of the day. Human trafficking is about vices and money. It's a profitable business, and when you take away a person's money and their vice, you've interfered with some deep things. So these are some of the other issues, the fundamental issues to really deal with in Trinidad and Tobago, that we have persons who have an appetite and a fetish for having sex with children, and also for going and buying sex, paying for sex and other types of things, and abusing women also in the process, because many victims are subjected to physical abuse, rape, and other types of abuse. So there are persons in our society that we need to deal with as a country. Is this where we want to go as a country, really?
Thank you very much. Shortman, could you put up that seizure by the SIU, please? And we, as we asked Ms. Wheeler to give a final word, we have major news up next in 4 minutes. So, folks, if you're looking on, these are the drugs that the SIU seized over the weekend, which we know are used a lot too in human trafficking operations as well. Ms. Wheeler,
and if I could just share a little bit about this case before Ms. Wheeler wraps up. Police busted a human. Where is it? No. Right. $8 million worth of illegal drugs seized in Trin City. 4 Chinese immigrants arrested. A quantity of cash was also confiscated. The incident took place during an intelligence-led exercise which was conducted in the Northern Division under the supervision of Assistant Commissioner of Police, Central Intelligence Bureau, Dio Saran, on Wednesday, 26 January. During the exercise, a search warrant for firearms and ammunition was executed at the residence located at Olympia Avenue, Millennium Park, Trin City. During a search of the premises, officers allegedly found and seized 201 glass vials, each labeled ketamine 10% INJ 23 ml for veterinary use only, along with 76 Ziploc packets, each containing a white crystal-like substance resembling the dangerous drug ketamine. The officers also found and seized 33,775 TT currency in polymer notes, 865 yen, and 53 TT currency notes, and apparatus. Ketamine is a medication that doctors use as an anesthetic to induce loss of consciousness. Effects include sedation and reduced sensation of pain. Police believe that with this seizure, an additional inroads have been made into the human trafficking ring operating in Trinidad and Tobago, as drugs of this nature are used to prey on unsuspecting victims.
Your final words for Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Wheeler. Thank you, Natasha.
Well, thanks to I-95.5 for continuing to air these concerns on radio, and just to ask and appeal to persons in our country to please pray for our nation and pray against persons who continue to facilitate the crime of human trafficking, that our country would really be delivered from these things. This heinous crime, it is a terrible, heinous crime against the rights of an individual. And we should not have it in our country.
Maybe you should start naming and shaming people, Ms. Wheeler. What about that?
Yes.
Right.
Well, with the consent of the police, certainly.
Yes. Ms. Wheeler, thank you very much. God bless you all. God bless the Protective Service of Trinidad and Tobago, especially those in the front line fighting against this dangerous international criminal activity called human trafficking. God bless you all. Take care. We'll keep in touch. Thank you so much for your time. All right, folks, so that's where we leave it. Thank you all who joined us on Facebook and YouTube and listened on I-95.5 again. It's a pleasure for us to bring this education and information to you.
Indeed. Have a good week.
Major news up next with Mr. Daly Enoch.
Good afternoon.
Broadcasting from Port of Spain, Trinidad, this is the most influential name in radio.